see this so much right now, especially as people are struggling to move through the world in their group identities and feel struggling to have a sense of belonging, that we build these walls based on made up purity tests and push away people who could be our allies, who could be our teachers, who could expand the group.
In a world that often pulls us apart, More in Common brings us back to what matters. Hosted by Gerren Taylor and Keith Richardson, this isn't your average podcast. It's a challenge to think deeper, question louder, and grow further. At More in Common, we work with NFL teams, tech companies, and professionals across industries to improve communication and foster compassion. And with a focus on emotional intelligence, we aim to bring a wealth of experience to help you navigate the complexities of human connection. We've never been more connected and yet more isolated. We want to explore the roots of that tension and offer a way back to what we all need: real human connection. Enjoy the show.
It's not quite as popular as
I was surprised that it was popular in the middle school age as well, but it just goes to show what a true masterpiece, what a masterwork of art.
I mean,
Hamilton
from a music standpoint, man, Wait For It. It's one of my favorite jams.
Yeah. Booyah.
You know,
that one hits.
Just
I even like the Schuyler sisters performing like introduction song. It's like sassy.
Yeah.
It's got layers.
Yeah. I've listened to that soundtrack so many times.
Are we revealing how nerdy we are to the whole audience?
I think that's part of the fun. It's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I had somebody one time tell me I look like a poor Jake Paul. And it's like, okay, well, if you think I look like a poor Jake Paul, let me buck the perception and let's talk about Hamilton in Star Wars Legos and the brain.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, and if you still think that, that's cool too. He's better at marketing than I am, that's for sure.
But he's so salacious, right? Like you have values and stuff like that. You don't let yourself get all caught up in that.
I mean, you kind of have values?
Maybe.
All right. Gee, how are you today?
I started off a little rough, started off a little cloudy, but we're just going to keep it moving. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think last week I was talking about I was doing the shimmy body roll.
Yeah. You got the shimmy going to start.
So now I might Carlton through this episode. You never know.
Ooh. Yeah.
Bring it all the way back.
I love it, dude. I used to love the Carlton.
I like the idea of we use this a lot, like the Temu Jake Paul, or the off the shelf generic version of whatever equivalent that we're making. And it is in fact kind of funny because it's similar to the logical fallacy, continuing our series of logical fallacies that we're doing this week. The No True Scotsman, right? So like no rich Jake Paul would be into Hamilton and Lego.
Wouldn't do that. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's you introduced me to this one. I had never heard of it before, so I had to do some digging and research, but it instantly had me realizing how frequently this one occurs, especially in social movements.
Yeah. I'll give a shout out to my debate career, because this is one of those things that we picked up as in order to defend arguments and to identify logical fallacies as they occur.
I mean, this one's a tough one too, because it can be really difficult. We talked a lot last week about the emotional elements, feeling threatened, etc. But we'll define it first, right? A No True Scotsman fallacy. It happens when someone alters the definition of a group or a term to exclude counterexamples, often to protect or defend a cherished belief or an inadequate opposing view. So really, it's an argument that shifts the goalpost to suit the need of your argument, as the argument being made may challenge the argument that you have. I thought it was interesting, so I took a note. It actually was coined in 1975, so it hasn't been defined for all that long. And it got its name from an imaginary conversation where one person argues that No Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. And when shown an example of a Scotsman who does, the first person changes the criteria by saying, well, no true Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge.
And
And
as a
this
side
ultimately
note,
highlights how,
when I was learning
yeah,
this, changed it into, because you know, it's always nice to have like mnemonics or things that help you remember stuff. So for me, I always related it to how black people talk about whether or not you put sugar on your grits. So I would do no real black person puts sugar on their
no
grits,
real
but
black person puts his sugar on it. Yeah, totally. It's very much applied as subcultures and it's done all the time. It's a purity test. But it's a
yeah,
purity test that has no definition or no boundaries. And like really making the while sometimes it might be a little esoteric and vague in the way we talk about it, there are some awesome examples of how this happens and we've probably all experienced it. When were the first one to see a movie and then all of a sudden it becomes popular. It's like, yeah,
right,
but I caught that one
right,
first.
right,
Or if you heard of a band before they were famous. Fair weather sports fans,
yeah.
goodness gracious, I will tell you in my lifetime how many times I've had to prove that I am a pure Patriots fan because I used to go to the games when they were 1-15 and weren't aired on television. And the
You
only
have to
way
like
we could watch
know
them was by going
Brady's
to them.
blood type or like Brady's
Yeah,
rookie.
right. Or you're just another fair weather fan. I mean, a fan's a fan, right? And this is how it plays into the logical fallacy. Let's talk about fandom for a second. Is that there is some purity test to being what we would call a true fan or a true
Right.
Scotsman. When in reality, it's like fans are fans. And some fans like a team when they're winning, and some fans like a team all the time. And some fans like multiple teams.
I think
There's
for
so
me,
many
it's really
variations.
interesting too because I always make that connection back, right? I feel that the sense of belonging that drives us all as human beings is kind of what undergirds this. It's why it works as a
Yeah,
tool, right, to other people and push them out
absolutely.
because we all want to be a part of
Absolutely.
something and that feels true. And the danger comes in when we start gatekeeping that or making up rules. And you see this honestly right now a lot blackness even, right? I said the internet is so full of wild stuff. But like arguing that Cardi B isn't black. And I used like the Cardi B gift to respond to it. Like, you know, she's obviously Latina as well, but black, you know what I mean? And so when people start gatekeeping the truth of others is really when you see this no true Scotsman fallacy come about. And you saw it also too in hip hop, right? Like when Eminem came out back in the day, or even older, way back, Beastie Boys, right? Like, could it be real hip hop if it was from white folks? And you know, as we try to protect our sense of belonging and comfort, you know, you should, you know, ask the audience, or audience can ask themselves, like, have you ever experienced this, like feeling like, or being the one to rewrite the rules to define who belongs to protect your comfort, to protect your idea of what something is.
It's such an awesome, like, thank you for bringing it all into that space that you just mentioned. Because it's so important. When we think about how frequently this actually occurs in the state of belonging, it happens all the time. And we see it even more so because we're all about navigating civilization to draw more connections so we can have more common direction and we can stop just pissing on each other's vinegar, right? I think I'm mixing multiple analogies there, but that's good. I like doing it. We see it here in America. Like, what is a true American? How many times do you see it on the internet of what
Mhm.
defines a true American? And often, what defines a true American to you is what you feel like a true American is. Some will say a true American is diverse in their cultural experience because they're an immigrant coming looking for new and
Right.
better opportunities to extend their
Striving for
family.
American dream. Yeah.
Yeah, others will say a true American is someone with grit who's been here for a long time and believes in the Second Amendment and believes in freedom of speech and saying whatever you want. That's a true American.
Yeah.
And then a true American is someone who's willing to go to battle for America that 1% of our population who has ever enlisted and gone into the military, and then the subset of that that's actually seen active duty.
It's also when
And
you
then we
see
fight
someone in your
over it.
community. Yeah, you see someone in your community do something and you say, "Well, that's not what we do." All of a sudden, they don't represent the community any longer, and it really often
Yeah.
is something that's like not that's not a rule, you know? That's just everybody's allowed to have diverse opinions, and it's often fear dressed up as convictions, fear of change, fear of difference, fear of other, dressed up as conviction, and we say that can't be.
You hit it on the head when we talk about belonging. That fear that my way of life is wrong in some way and I'm not doing it the right way. The
Yeah,
complexity of all the different ways to live life, and we only have one, and we're trying to simplify this so we can actually, when we think about the human experience, our human experience is one, to survive, and two, to enjoy. It is not to make money. It is not to thrive. Thriving has very different definitions. And so often we bounce. We talk about this all the time from group to group. And, some of the common examples, and I just want to list these off because I think it's really important because you said something. How do we establish those boundaries? What is a devoted spouse? Well, some might say a spouse would never ask for time alone. I would disagree.
right,
Some might say real men don't cry. Some might say a real Christian doesn't question the Bible. Some might say a real musician reads music. Authentic Mexican food doesn't use cheddar cheese. What
yeah.
defines authentic Mexican food? I mean, you live
Who's
in
the fine?
Mexico. There are people who were born in Mexico and they make food in Mexico. Maybe it's not culturally rooted in some long history of Mexican cuisine, but who's making these definitions?
Right.
Or a genuine leader never shows weakness. To your point, these boundaries, and this is the purity test of the No True Scotsman,
Right.
are shifting goalposts based on what makes sense for me and my group. We have to talk about the Dunbar number again.
I
Our
also think
group.
that it's important to say that we see this so much right now, especially as people are struggling to move through the world in their group identities and feel struggling to have a sense of belonging, that we build these walls based on made up purity tests and push away people who could be our allies, who could be our teachers, who could expand the group. And you're so right to say that the belonging, the sense of belonging is at the heart of this. That is the heart of the fallacy, and when our sense of belonging feels threatened is when we start to move the goalposts. And it feels safe in the moment, but it costs us the growth that we need to move forward in a lot of these things, especially on the left right now. The fracturing of what is, the liberal or far left groups who all essentially want some of the same things, but there's this performative morality that takes place, or who's hurting the most, instead of organizing around the things that we do agree on, you know, and trying to make some things better. There's a lot of
It has
outing.
been, yeah, this is it, it's such a difficult thing to navigate. And we've seen it in major social movements for the last 100 years in women's suffrage. During the women's suffrage movement, Black women were involved until they weren't. And
Yeah,
then it became about getting the votes, and the Black voices were no longer accepted and they were pushed out when they were all trying for the same thing: civil rights, violence versus nonviolence, and the Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X. And then you create these subgroups that say this is the way to do it. No real Black person would do this way, as you put it. And in today's day, look, I've got multiple personal experiences as I navigate these things, because
yeah,
I'll go on this story. We talked last week about redshirting kids. Now, this is happening with a particular individual who espouses we're going to be very specific, anti female trans athletes in women's sports
Got it.
because of the unfair advantage that that provides to them. To me, that's an inconsistency. It's an impurity to your position that children's fairness is the thing that we're looking at. And I'll take it a step further because we're talking about this monolithic perception or monolithic argument that says, well, it's about the kids. And in Ohio,
Wait. So
our
we have to clear
governor,
this up because in case somebody missed
yeah,
part of it. You're saying that this person is complaining about the unfair advantage that trans athletes might have, and also at the same time trying to provide their children an unfair advantage by holding them back a year in grade
correct.
school that they are grade level but aged up compared to their
Yeah,
peers. Sweet.
correct.
Just
An
wanted to make sure that was
inconsistency.
what I heard.
Just want to be sure. Yeah, I want to make sure that we mention that. And there's this purity test. Like, oh, so you don't really care about kids. No true Scotsman would do that
Right.
if you really care about. When you can separate them and create multiple arguments and really talk about each one. And I take it a step further, not to be super abstract, but in the state of Ohio, our governor signed a ban on selling of hemp products. And the argument is made, and so this is my navigation of it, right? Even though I'm not part of the ecosystem that would otherwise make the argument. I heard the argument made on a podcast is that these are dangerous. They're marketed to kids. We need to keep them out of the home because kids are finding it in the house and they're taking it. And we need to protect kids. So they need to get rid of the hemp products. From a discussion standpoint, we can break down that argument and we can have a conversation about hemp and whether that's true or not. As soon as someone says we have to protect kids, now purity tests start kicking in. I start having them. Like, okay, if you care about kids, so what are we going to do to regulate alcohol and cigarettes in the home? What are we going to do to regulate guns in the home? What are we going to do to all these? If we're all about protecting kids, why aren't we doing all of these things? And while I feel really justified in that argument, it's not actually engaging in the logical discussion around hemp. We can expand the discussion and change the parameters of what we're talking about. But my argument, and this is why it's a fallacy, is the logical jump to say, yeah, but your argument is flawed because you're not pure enough to care about all of these other things too.
Yeah. And it comes down to our everyday lives as well. Like when people don't use the perfect language, we often discredit their whole intent. Like you don't have to agree to understand, and you don't have to attack to defend. You can also let these other things exist, especially when it comes down to what you're saying about the purity test. It just makes us so rigid, and empathy and curiosity make us stronger, more resilient, more informed. And you find you don't have the need to be the right kind of anything, right? You can be all those things.
And I was going to add, you don't need to be right. The right answer needs to be right. And doesn't mean you need to have it. And it doesn't, because you even said the irony of the No True Scotsman logical fallacy is that its inflexibility or its flexibility to move the goalpost on what purity looks like is the rigidity of the argument itself. Because you continue to move the goalposts to maintain thus you are being rigid in the conclusion that you're drawing. And then why is this a problem? And look, we talked about it happened in civil rights. It's happening in the MAGA movement. Like, no, there's a reason that it's a Republican in name only or a rhino as defined by the MAGA movement that creates division. It creates separation and it creates isolation. And as a result, we have fights, we have combat instead of conflict. We have wars, and we ultimately can't move forward that's meaningful to both of us because of that rigidity of purity in the conversation.
So how do we look inside of ourselves, ask ourselves, where do I do this? Where am I moving the goalposts in my life to protect my comfort?
I think it's really, I mean, it starts all of this. Build your emotional awareness and resilience. We have some episodes out there to help in that. Going back to the check in, I'll refer back to that episode often. But there are other ways. Learn to meditate, go to therapy, go on a psychedelic ayahuasca trip, something that allows you to access the deep recesses of your emotional experience so you can be more aware of it. It's always going to
Mm.
start there. I would say, and I'm wildly curious to hear your answers, especially from a debate, active awareness of these things happening. But as you explore these, inspect the boundaries that you're injecting into an argument. Are we arguing the discussion of hemp, or am I now saying you're impure in your argument because of all of these other things?
Right. And I think to me
What are,
that's the underlying
go
part.
ahead.
The crux is how you see others really is a reflection of you, right? And what grace are you giving to yourself, right? We often talk about empathy for others, but this one's also about empathy for yourself, right? Sometimes we exile the parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, that don't fit the story we want to tell. And if we see that show up in someone else, we say, nope, can't, that ain't it. I can't be on that same page, right? Like with something that's like that. And it's the No True Scotsman inside of us, the internal gatekeeping.
Yeah.
What
Can
am I
we, I want
protecting
to
that?
anchor on that. Yeah. I want to anchor there, right there. Because you
Yeah.
talked about belonging a couple of times and that experience of personal purity. There is a weaponization of this. In other words, I care about being pure as represented, and our social influences matter. So when someone throws out another idea of what purity might be that contradicts how you thought you have been pure the entire time,
Yeah.
it can create a lot of internal conflict. Like, oh, am I not pure enough? Then the questions come down to what does it matter what they define as pure versus what I like? Why is it that their definition is suddenly my definition? It's okay that they have a different definition of pure than you do, and accepting that, but really understanding what is the boundary for you, and does it really matter? Are
That's
your
it.
values anchored, and does it really matter?
What am I losing? It's the emotional tools, and this is kind of what I thought about this for this section of how do we reconnect? How do we work through this occurring, right? Naming the fear. What am I afraid of losing if I let this
Mm.
person stay in the circle? How does it change how I define or see myself? And then broaden the definition, like you were just saying. Like maybe there's more than one way to be a hip hopper, or I don't know, whatever small idiosyncratic
It-
group that you're a part of, like Yarn Lovers or America. I don't know, but maybe it could be from all sorts of walks of life. Broaden the definition of what that is, and to choose inclusion consciously. You can hold standards without turning them into hard walls, to choose to be inclusive in these spaces and in these times. And bringing it back to one of the things that I think we always anchor on this show is embracing humility and curiosity, embracing curiosity, you know, tell me more about how you
mm.
see this thing, or come to understand, right? Instead of saying that's not what XYZ does, tell me how that became part of this for you, or how does this fit into how you see yourself?
You
Because
can be
curiosity,
inclusive with, go ahead,
well, I'm just
finish that
saying the
thought.
curiosity allows you to give an opportunity to see yourself beyond the label as you've already prescribed it, right? If I call myself a lefty, Democrat, liberal, whatever, there's a lot of people who call themselves that too. So asking them how they get to how they define themselves allows me to expand what the definition of that label is, rather than just being like, well, you're not one of me if you're not XYZ, if you don't fit this exact mold that essentially I invented for myself anyway, right? Because there's no
First of all, I just want to reiterate, and I probably butcher it, being inclusive with boundaries without creating walls. Like, damn, that's so good. And I love your example of hip hop as it relates to the debate on whether or not Eminem is a true rap icon. There is, amongst the black diaspora, a debate on whether or not that's true. Some say he is one of the greatest of all time. He absolutely is. Others will say he's not black, he can't be. And those definitions, and so this is the nature of the logical fallacy, because logical fallacies are false representations of logic to make a point. Neither has the answer relative to this massively subjective definition that is established by the holder of the opinion in that moment. And for us as individuals and people who are tuned into this podcast, who are looking to more effectively navigate these spaces, release the walls, open the walls of your purity test to be curious, as you put it, about the other possibilities and relinquish the strict nature of these subjective realities, and you open yourself up to way more possibilities of joy rather than sticking to the rigidity of the things, because that's where you establish so much of your identity.
The more we make
and
space
look, you
for
got one life.
The more we make space for difference, the more authentic belonging becomes. When everybody's able to show up more as their real self, more authentic, because we allow for difference, then that's when you're really keeping it real.
And then we as people, and then we as individuals get to be fluid through the dynamic nature of life, and we get to find spaces that we never thought we would be a part of, because while we might have our saw this neuroscientist speak last week at a conference, and it's the semi-permeable membrane that is what encapsulates a cell. It's a structure that allows for things to come in and out. And that semi-permeable membrane is the nature of all structures that ever exist. Our skin is semi-permeable. It allows oxygen in, it allows light in, it allows the dynamic. It is not a rigid structure that has no influence on the external. Our group dynamics of our 4 to 5 dominant trust ecosystems have a semi-permeable membrane that allow for entry and exit of people in that group. And then so it just continues to grow and grow. If we see the semi-permeable membrane as a rigid wall, life cannot exist. So that's all.
That's it.
That's my last word.
That's it. That's my word.
That's my word.
Curiosity doesn't dilute community, it deepens it. I think that's my connection on the last word too, is that, the more curious we are, the deeper connections we can make with people, stronger the bonds of the group are anyway. So let's not put up false walls. Let's just get to know people better and figure out how
civilization isn't going anywhere as much as I'd like it to be, Dunbar's number and we all have our own little communes. It's just not going to happen. So we've got to figure out how to adapt more effectively to it.
Too late to go back to little tribes? No?
I think so.
Sometimes I make the joke we should just go back to 1995 internet. I think that was enough for us. Broadband. We should all have to dial up. We should have to make a choice between being on the phone and being on the internet still.
I love it.
This is the More Uncommon podcast, everybody. Like it, share it, give it to a friend, leave us a comment, let us know how silly we are in the comments. We'll respond. Well, we enjoy making these conversations and making sure that, we are trying to live up to the conversations that we're having. So let's keep the conversation going, everybody. Have fun, and we'll see you next week.